Sing Sing Prison Food Truth: What Death Row Inmates in America Eat Before Execution. Subscribe now for weekly prison crime breakdowns and real-life case analysis you won't hear anywhere else. The metal door to the execution chamber closed with a sound so heavy it felt like the end of the world. It was June 19, 1953, inside Sing Sing Prison in New York. Guards moved quickly down the narrow corridor known as Death House. Their shoes echoed against cold stone floors. The electric chair waited under bright white lights. Outside the prison walls, reporters gathered. Protesters shouted in the distance. Inside, the air was silent and tight. Just hours earlier, Julius Rosenberg had eaten his final meal. No one in the prison spoke loudly that night. Every officer knew history was being written. The Rosenbergs had been convicted of passing atomic secrets to the Soviet Union during the Cold War. The case shook America. Some believed justice was being served. Others believed a mistake was about to happen. But inside Sing Sing, there was only procedure. Routine. Orders. Before any execution at Sing Sing, there was always one quiet ritual: the last meal. Rosenberg's final meal was simple. Like most inmates at Sing Sing, he did not receive a lavish request. In New York at the time, death row inmates were served the same standard prison dinner available to everyone else. There were no extravagant feasts, no unlimited choices. The prison kitchen prepared basic American food: meat, vegetables, bread, and coffee. It was controlled, measured, ordinary. That ordinary meal was the last taste of freedom he would ever have. At 8 p.m., officers escorted him from his cell. The hallway lights buzzed overhead. Witnesses were already seated. The chaplain stood nearby. Prison staff had performed this duty before, but never under such global attention. The tension was thick enough to feel. And then something unexpected happened. The first surge of electricity did not immediately end his life. Guards froze. Doctors stepped forward. The chamber felt smaller. Procedures were repeated. The room stayed silent except for the hum of machinery. Outside the walls, the world waited for confirmation. But to understand how Sing Sing became the center of America's most feared final meal ritual, and why death row inmates there never received luxury requests like in other states, we have to go back. Back to the beginning of Death House. Back to the system that decided what a condemned man would eat before facing the electric chair. And back to the growing fear that the prison's strict routine was hiding cracks beneath the surface. Long before that June night in 1953, Sing Sing Prison had already built a reputation that made even hardened criminals uneasy. Built in 1826 along the Hudson River in New York, Sing Sing became one of America's most famous prisons. Its execution chamber, known simply as Death House, began using the electric chair in 1891. It was one of the first prisons in the United States to carry out executions by electricity. Over the decades, more than 600 men were executed there. The routine became cold, structured, almost mechanical. Death row inmates at Sing Sing were housed separately from the general population. Their world was smaller, quieter, more controlled. They lived in narrow cells inside Death House itself. Guards walked the corridor constantly. Conversations were limited. Every movement was monitored. Unlike some modern states where inmates could request special last meals, steak, seafood, even fast food, Sing Sing followed strict rules. The last meal was usually the same meal served to the rest of the prison that day. Meatloaf, potatoes, bread, coffee. No outside orders. No restaurant deliveries. New York prison officials believed routine kept order. Luxury was not part of the system. For many inmates, the simplicity of the final meal made the moment heavier. It was ordinary food on an extraordinary night. Julius Rosenberg and his wife, Ethel Rosenberg, had been transferred to Sing Sing after their conviction for conspiracy to commit espionage. The Cold War had placed America in a state of fear. The government argued that atomic secrets had been passed to the Soviet Union. Their trial drew global attention. Appeals lasted for years. Protests spread across the United States, the United Kingdom, and even parts of Europe. Inside Sing Sing, however, officers followed procedure. Paperwork. Timetables. Checklists. But tension was building inside Death House during the Rosenberg's final days. Supporters sent letters daily. Phone calls flooded the prison office. Security increased. Guards feared possible unrest outside the prison gates. While there were no riots inside Sing Sing during this case, staff prepared for chaos. Additional officers were placed on duty. Patrol routes doubled. No mistakes could happen. On the day of execution, the kitchen prepared the regular evening meal. Nothing special. Nothing symbolic. Just standard prison food. Some guards later said the quiet in Death House that evening felt different. Heavier than usual. The inmates in nearby cells barely spoke. Even hardened prisoners seemed shaken by the global spotlight on their neighbors. And as the sun went down over the Hudson River, the final routine began. The chaplain entered. Paperwork was signed. The warden confirmed the time. The system was moving forward. And once it started, there was no turning back. The hallway outside the execution chamber felt colder than usual. At 8 p.m., guards escorted Julius Rosenberg from his small cell inside Death House. His steps were steady. The corridor lights buzzed above him. Witnesses were already seated inside the chamber. Prison officials, doctors, reporters, and selected observers. Every movement followed a strict checklist written decades earlier when Sing Sing first introduced the electric chair in 1891. Ethel Rosenberg had already been executed earlier that evening. The routine never changed. The inmate was strapped into the wooden chair. Leather belts secured the chest, arms, and legs. A metal cap was placed on the head. A doctor stood nearby to confirm the end. The warden read the death warrant aloud. The room remained silent except for the sound of paper being unfolded. Outside the prison walls, crowds gathered. Some prayed. Some protested. Police officers controlled the streets. Radio stations across the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada waited for confirmation. This was no ordinary execution. It was one of the most controversial cases in American history. Inside the chamber, time felt frozen. At the signal, the executioner activated the switch. Electricity surged through the chair. Witnesses later reported that the first jolt did not immediately stop Julius Rosenberg's heart. Doctors stepped forward quickly. Procedures required confirmation. A second surge followed. Then a third. The system that was designed to be swift had stumbled under global pressure. Guards did not speak. Their training told them to remain calm. But several later admitted the moment stayed with them for years. The mechanical hum of electricity. The stillness of the witnesses. The weight of history pressing down on a small concrete room. At 8:16 p.m., the doctor officially pronounced Julius Rosenberg dead. Outside, word spread quickly. Newspapers printed special editions. Supporters mourned. Others believed justice had been served. The debate over capital punishment grew louder. But inside Sing Sing, there was no celebration and no debate. Only clean-up. The straps were removed. The chair was prepared for the next scheduled use. Paperwork was filed. The body was transported according to state procedure. The kitchen workers washed dishes from the evening meal, the same meal served to every inmate that night. For prison staff, the contrast was striking. Just hours before, the condemned man had eaten a simple tray of standard prison food. Meat, vegetables, bread, coffee. No special request. No final feast. Just routine. And that routine, cold, controlled, and unchanging, would soon face a future it never expected. Because within 2 decades, the electric chair at Sing Sing would fall silent. And America's entire death penalty system would begin to shift. After the Rosenberg executions, something inside America began to change. Sing Sing's electric chair continued to stand inside Death House, silent but ready. 4 years, execution still followed the same strict pattern. Basic final meal, signed paperwork, witnesses seated, switch pulled. No luxury requests. No dramatic last feasts. Just routine. But outside prison walls, public opinion was shifting. Through the 1960s, legal challenges against the death penalty grew stronger. Defense lawyers argued that capital punishment was applied unfairly. Some cases revealed racial bias. Others questioned whether the electric chair caused unnecessary suffering. Across the United States, courts began to slow executions with appeals and reviews. Then, in 1972, the U.S. Supreme Court made a historic decision in Furman v. Georgia. The ruling temporarily halted the death penalty nationwide. Executions stopped. Death rows emptied or converted to life sentences. The electric chair at Sing Sing, once used hundreds of times, fell silent. New York would not carry out another execution for decades. Inside Sing Sing, Death House remained, but its purpose changed. The chamber became a symbol of a past era, one of strict routines and simple final meals. No more last trays carried down the corridor. No more chaplains standing beside the chair. Just an empty room that once held the final moments of over 600 men and women. In 1995, New York reinstated the death penalty, but no one was executed before the law was ruled unconstitutional again in 2004. The electric chair was never used again. The ritual of the final meal inside Sing Sing became history. Today, Sing Sing still operates as a maximum security prison along the Hudson River. But Death House is no longer active. The electric chair remains stored away, a reminder of a time when a standard prison dinner could be a man's last taste of life. The truth about Sing Sing prison food before execution is simple. There were no grand final feasts. No outside orders. Just the same meal served to every inmate. Routine over spectacle. Control over emotion. And that may be what makes it so haunting. Because in the end, history shows that sometimes the most chilling detail is not what was extraordinary, but what was completely ordinary. A plain metal tray. A quiet hallway. And a final meal that looked just like any other.